Welcome to this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Sunny's guest is John Hittler, CEO of Evoking Genius. John specializes in creating seamlessly impossible outcomes, whether transforming a struggling team to become top performers or engaging an audience with his playful, interactive, life-changing style. His belief is simple. We are each endowed with one genius talent, different than any other person on the planet. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of ITBD, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, Todd. And John, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we have had multiple discussions just on culture and leadership and organizations. You have so much wisdom. You have written 3 books, and I am just so excited about having a conversation with you today. Why don't we start with, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, John?
Well, the short version is I grew up in the Midwest. At 18, I left and went to California, and I've been in Silicon Valley since then. Married, 7 kids, all from around the world. We have adopted kids, and I'm a 9-time company founder and CEO. So that's a good place for me to play.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, John. And now, Todd, you can start with your questions.
All right. So, John, in your TEDx talk, you actually speak about genius talent. Why don't you share with us what the genius talent is and how identifying and leveraging the genius talent can help an organization grow?
Sure. So it's the concept started for me in 1994. And the theory was that there was one talent that you held. Great. Good concept. Lots of people have it. What my partners and I realized is that the methodology for most people was to provide some sort of context or lists, and you self-selected. We thought that was crazy. The reason being, human beings aren't very good at self-selecting. If we knew what we were really great at, you wouldn't need a list. You just say, I know what mine is. So the prompts on the lists were having people choose what they wanted to be, not who they were. So we took the theory that if you've got a DNA with all kinds of traits and abilities and physical characteristics, even psychological things, which we know can be part of your DNA, why couldn't you also have one, we called it a genius level talent that's part of you? Which, if you go with that theory, it means you're the only human being in the history of mankind that's ever had it. That might be pretty important to find out. And what we developed was a way of people, we could tease it out of people. They would gently tell us and not know, just through a discovery process. And so we've been doing that. My partners and I have been doing it since 2007. We've done it with about 10,000 people. And it's a way to really bring out the natural talent, not career, but talent. And then it's easy from there. You say, well, if your talent is, Sunny, let's say you could juggle 11 red balls with your left hand. Very unusual. How would you use that in your role? As opposed to saying, I'm in charge of bill collecting at my company. I should do it this way. We say just the opposite. How would you be a great bill collector at your company if your best talent or your genius level talent were to juggle 11 balls with your left hand? We just reverse the two. And that's how you bring forth unbelievable results as opposed to trained results. We don't mind training, but play in genius talent, you get exponential results.
Yeah, Sunny, like this morning, even just this morning, we were talking about how here at ITBD, people move around. And, you and I have often had that discussion about kind of that God-given talent, very similar here. How have you found as you've grown ITBD from, just you and Cam to now, over 500 people, how have you leveraged using that genius talent or that God-given talent to really help people bloom and help the company grow?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was not aware of this, the natural ability that you have, or the natural wiring that you have. And the first time I was a little bit more aware was when we implemented the EOS system. where the natural wiring that they talk about, and I'm like, what is my natural wiring? But in the beginning, it was all about hard work. It was all about getting somewhere as a first generation immigrant to the United States. I was just focusing on one thing, which was what can I do every single day to be successful as an immigrant? And I chose computer engineering as my career path while doing my blue collar jobs, right? So yeah. So in the beginning, it was just acquiring that specialized knowledge. That was my goal, and that's where we start. The computer engineering. After computer engineering, when we started IT by Design, it was all about being a good tech, being a good technologist. And then when I got into entrepreneurship a little bit more and leadership a little bit more, that's where I slowly, as we were growing and we have to find something that I can delegate, I started finding things that I'm not good at. And slowly, because people start, when you create a safe environment in the company, your people around you will let you know that, hey, Sunny, this is where I know you're putting your best effort, but still the outcome is not there. And that's where you start thinking about, okay, those are the things that you want to delegate to someone. And it's more, you start finding people where they do well in that area. And that's slowly, I'm just so curious to learn more from John, that what is his philosophy of genius talent and how one can go about discovering their genius talent. But so far, what I have done as part of our EOS is that I took the visionary seat, and everything else as part of the visionary seat, I had to delegate to my integrator. And all I have done is, how can I be that resourceful leader? My people skills are really good, that I connect with people, I build relationships, and it's about bringing my network to my leaders and being that architect where my leaders are, just letting me know where, as part of our business plan and our vision, as our VTO in the EOS terms, where we are going as a business and where these department leaders are going, and me being the architect and just serving them. Serving my leaders is number one thing. And I just serve them by bringing the network that I have built. And so far, what I have discovered is one thing that is naturally, it gives me energy, it gives me really excitement, is when I go out there and build relationships.
No, it's spectacular. So it's interesting because you spoke about that's a way to be a CEO, as a relationship builder. Now, other people do it through product based. They've got a natural sense of what's next. A Steve Jobs type who can kind of he was a product based and a visionary based. He wasn't a relationships guy. There's no one way to be a CEO. With genius talent, one of the ways to test it is to take it out of your career. So how are you a dad? Like, are you a dad the same way? When you're really good as a parent, are you doing it because you're nurturing and encouraging relationships with your kids? Oh, if that's the same and it gives you energy as a parent, you say that's probably close to your genius talent, because talent is universal. It shows up with friends. What kind of friend are you? So you may be the friend that I would call at 2:30 in the morning because I say, my life is falling apart. Who's the one person I can call? Who's the one relationship I have that I could call at 2:30 in the morning? They would take my call and talk me off the ledge. I should call Sunny. Oh, that's how you would have a sense. And what people tend to want to do is they say, I had somebody last week who's curious about the concept. And they said, I know my genius talent. It's digital marketing. And so I asked them, I said, so were you an idiot 10 years ago when digital marketing didn't exist? Your genius talent is never a profession. They had the same genius talent. It can't be a thing like my genius talent is digital marketing. No, there's something you do that makes you better at digital marketing perhaps than other people, but it's never a career. And so there's a lot to it, but there's you have to remember it's a talent that you bring to your profession, not a profession that you justify with an explanation.
So let's talk about this a little bit more, John. A lot of our viewers, they are MSP owners, managed service providers. These are technology entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And sometimes I refer our channel, and I'm one of those MSP owners where I have the technology background. And I call myself incidental entrepreneur sometimes, that I happen to be in technology, solving technology problems, and that became a business. And a lot of our MSP owners, their background is technology. They are great when it comes to technology, but when it comes to leadership and building teams and building the organizations, that's where sometimes they have a very tough journey because they naturally gravitates towards the technology stuff. So
Yes.
the question I have for you is, how can these technology entrepreneurs discover their genius talent so that the role that they're playing is the CEO role? And how can they identify and how can they find their highest and best use once they discover their genius talent?
Yeah. So the discovery is, there's lots of ways to do it. There's popular programs, there's assessment tests. All of them are progress in the right direction. Our process is 3 hours. It's a robust discussion. And what you'll never find in your result is something you'd ever see on one of those assessment tests. So I'll give you an example. My genius talent is creating seemingly impossible outcomes that address multiple and divergent agendas. And people say, where did you get that? It was teased out of me. And some of the things, like people, I don't think it's a weird thing, but I talked my way into university without ever applying and without being accepted. People say, well, you can't do that. It was a top 10 university and I did it. And I wasn't an athlete. I didn't know you couldn't do that. So to me, it never dawned on me that was impossible. People I tell that to say, but that's impossible. You can't do that. And I said, but I did. And 4 years later, I graduated. Oh, and by the way, I didn't pay a dime. They paid for my whole education. They said, that was the talent I was given. I had no idea I had that talent. I just didn't have a backup plan. Well, that's what it looks like. And for the technologist, my word, that's trying to apply it to a CEO, it may not translate very well as being a stereotypical or a classical CEO. So the question is, how do you use your talents if you want to be the CEO? Is it a good fit? Do you need to have a partner with you who may do the people side? There's no one way to do that, but to do what they may end up doing, if they're really strong in technology, is, I'll use an analogy like Legos. If Legos are the technology, could you enroll people to play Legos with you? Kids that play Legos can play Legos for hours by themselves or with other people. Could you enroll people in the technology and the vision of the technology as opposed to trying to be the quote unquote relationship person? You're probably never going to be really great at that if that's not your strong suit. Why pretend?
So can you simplify this for us?
Sure.
Can you simplify in a way, what are those high level steps that one can take when they are going through this process?
I'll give you the secret that we don't tell people.
Okay, that's awesome.
Here's what people do. Everybody does it. They do it this way. Here's what I am, or here's what I do, which is me facing me. Yeah. Now all you do is say, what happens for your audience? Face it outwards. So Sonny, take yours. What happens to your audience or your tribe or the people in front of you? One person in front of you or many, when you are developing, nurturing, encouraging relationships? What really drives your energy is probably the interaction with the other people. But what is it that you provide for other people in the way that you do relationships, as opposed to, it's about me. I drive great relationship. Who cares? Who cares? What do the people across from you say? That's the secret. But if you can answer that, that's the shortcut, if you will.
Yeah. So what helps me is so having that technology background and having that the skill set and knowing the business, knowing the channel. So our business, John, used to be MSP for small businesses in New York City. And
Okay.
that gave us institutional knowledge to serve these SMBs. And then our competitors started coming to us because there was something that we were doing different, and where they saw the value that they wanted us to serve them with the NOC services, for example, 24/7, which was the need of the MSP channel. So our competitors became our customers. And where I'm going with this is then the talent that we're talking about, like having those people skills, having building relationships, because I've been going to a lot of these peer groups in the channel, developing my relationships. Now, when MSPs started consuming the NOC service as a product from us, that's when we noticed that we can serve a bigger community. And at the end of the day, what I have discovered for myself is building these tribes, building these communities is my calling. That's where I enjoy so much. That
Right.
what value I can create. And that gave me the other day when I was sharing with you the three pillars of our community and even our purpose. The purpose of IT by Design is building communities with passion for excellence. And we
Yeah.
have three pillars: internal ITBD community, our partners community, our strategic partners, circle of influencers community. And we are just creating value. One pillar is creating value for the second one, second is creating for the third one, and third one is creating for the first one. So it's just that interconnection amongst these three pillars, and it comes to community building. And what we really believe in is that with my passion for people and people being our product, we can create an ecosystem. That was the vision when we started serving the MSP channel.
Right.
And that's where we have now created a really, really healthy ecosystem, where that ecosystem consists of our internal ITBD community, our partner community, and our strategic partners.
It's perfect. You just, in a roundabout way, you just outlined the whole thing, because what you say is our three pillars start with building communities. Now, once you build communities and they say, we need something that we don't even think you guys have, but we need it, you say, they come to you first because of the community, not because you say, our first pillar is we're the absolute best guys at technology. We can fix anything. No. We're not positioning ourselves that way. Chances are you can. And if they say, we need this, and you say, we've never done that before, but you know what? Give me a week. Let me put my team on it and we'll figure it out, because because we're in relationship and community. They come to you first because you're great at building relationships. And oh, by the way, you do technology. It's not reversed, because otherwise you'd have to say we're the absolute ninja best at technology. That's a hard game to win, because there's always going to be somebody bigger, faster, or maybe further ahead. And the truth is, if they trust you, which is a relational piece, you'll get the request first. If you can't fix it or can't engineer it, you may partner with somebody or farm it out, or just say, I'm sorry, we can't help you. But they come to you first because of the community, not because they say, oh, these guys are the absolute badasses of the planet on technology. Maybe you are, but you don't lead with that, because you're not going to win on that one.
Yeah. And one question I have for you, John, where I think we got connected was you reaching out to me for your upcoming book, Double by Design. And I know you have been interviewing a lot of CEOs. And my question for you is there any correlation between CEOs where they are doubling by design and the genius talent that you talk about? Do you see do you see that CEOs where they have discovered their genius talent and they are laser focused on that, and they have built teams around them where they complement them? Do you see any relation between those growth companies where they're doubling by design and the genius talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. The shorter answer is yes. And here's what we think. I'm still interviewing people, still doing research, but the piece that we suspect is that, especially a founder CEO, the DNA in the culture and the DNA in the whole company oftentimes is very much the similar or same DNA of the founder. So if they're really clear about what their genius talent is, what their foundational values are in life, which they would, die for, you'll see that in the company. To the extent that the company lives that, here's a perfect example. Take a Larry Ellison. He's a classic example where the company mirrors his personal values. I'll use a polite term, intensity. The real world doesn't use that word for Oracle. They have a less polite word. But if you want to go to Oracle, you better be willing to be competitive, intense, cutthroat, win at all costs, all those sort of things. And if not, don't go there. Well, it's a reflection of who he be, if you will, in his personality and his core values, but it's also a function of how he plays. Everything from the America's Cup, which he writes a gigantic check for because he wants to win against everybody in the whole world. That's a specific attribute / talent. Some people, don't like that. Don't go to work there. It's a terrible fit. He couldn't win with my language, tree huggers. He could not hire tree huggers who say, I need feedback unsolicited 3 times a day. Oh, and by the way, it all has to be positive. You can't ever give me negative feedback. He'd say, get the F out of here, because he doesn't play that way. Well, there's a place for both. That's fine. He's not in the book and he won't be in the book, but a lot of the CEOs and their teams reflect the DNA and the initial style, if you will, but oftentimes that includes the genius talent of the founder.
Yeah, so thank you, John. And I want to take one more example from the real world. Let's say, so a lot of our viewers, again, they're MSP owners or service managers, technology background leaders or technology leaders, where they're leading technology team, IT infrastructure engineers at the service leadership level, and then they move on to the COO, and that's the career path, right? The CEO.
Sure.
So if I'm one of those professionals, it could be technology professional, service manager, CEO. I happen to be doing something where it's not my genius talent. What do you recommend? What do you suggest those individuals do so that they can make a smooth transition from what they're doing to where they need to be? Because it's always a challenge sometimes when you have done your degree to your experience and you happen to be just in one of those areas where you're not playing based on your genius talent. So what is your suggestion? Have you seen some successes, and what is the key to success to get there?
Perfect example is my founding partner. He did 12 Silicon Valley startups, 12 as an individual. He's not a VC, and 5 went public. I had never heard of such great odds because billionaire venture capitalists go 1 in 10. He went 5 in 12, and all 5 that he did still exist today, including KLA 10 Core, Symantec. I mean, unbelievable. He didn't know his genius talent until his mid-60s when he said, I'm not doing it anymore. It's too much energy. And he had, all the freedom, all the money he wanted. But what he realized when he did do his genius talent is he was naturally teaching, nurturing, and coaching. He was always in the product space. He's a mechanical engineer. He's a classic Silicon Valley guy. And he said, had I known my genius talent when I was 25, all 12 would have gone public. But he had person after person follow him from company to company. When he'd say, I've joined a new company, because he would go public and then retire, and then his wife would fire him from the house after about 18 months when she was driving him crazy. So he'd do this cycle, and he did it for like 30 years. And every time he said, hey, we're gonna engineer a new widget, it didn't matter what the product was. People would say, I thrive and grow when I'm around you as my leader, and I take career steps, advancement, because he was a natural teacher and coach. Not surprisingly, he came into the coaching business with us. He was a natural at it. He just didn't know it. Well, we could say he was trained as an engineer, and he went to MIT in the 60s. And he said, my engineering skills have long since been out of date. I can understand what my team creates, but I could no longer create it. But under his tutelage, and he was CEO several times as well of these companies, once he understood his genius talent, you go, that's perfect. A perfect example how it was talent that got him there, not his engineering skills, because he would have had to go back to engineering skills in the 70s and then again in the 80s and again in the 90s just to keep up with the advancements. He couldn't do that. And he was fabulously successful. And people were envious. They say, I wish I could have had a career like that. Well, because he was never only an engineer. In fact, he was really a gifted, I would call it a mentor / coach. They just didn't have those terms. Nobody was coaching. Nobody was mentoring in the 60s and 70s. That didn't come about until the 2000s. But he was doing it all along. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's this distinction between talent and trained abilities or learned. You go to engineering school, you kind of have a sense. You get out, you're going to be an engineer. What if you're not? What if you learned it as opposed to it's a naturally great fit? Better to learn your talent and team it with engineering than to say, well, my engineering skills, it's me versus every other engineer. And there's a ranking. I'm middle of the pack. You're indistinguishable. Doesn't mean you're not a good engineer. It's a harder road to take when you start with your skills and degree as opposed to your natural talent.
Now, John, is there any sign? So sometimes people are not aligned with their genius talent and they don't even know it, right? They think probably they do.
Yep.
And sometimes, or it's a question mark that they are not 100% sure that if they are playing using their genius talent. Is there any sign or, what do you suggest people look for when just to make sure that they are aligned or not aligned, they are able to discover it?
So I can tell you it's near impossible. We think we've had 4 people try it on their own, like they took a sabbatical for 90 days and all they did was get more confused. Because again, it assumes that you know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for and you find it, how do you know you found it? So what they did was they would get 6 or 8 theories and say, it's one of these 6 or 8, I think, but I'm more confused now than when I started. The one place that we do double check, and it's a fun question for a team. Let's say you're dealing with engineers. We'll ask the engineer, and I'll say they're 40. Give us the 7th grade version of who you were as an engineer. And they'll talk about their science project relative to other kids' science projects. And they said, well, gee, I was splitting an atom and shooting a rocket to the moon, and other kids had a piece of celery cut in half with one in red food. They go, right, there was a clue there. You like the intricacy, the complexity. You loved that. Well, did you love it at 12? Chances are it's natural. It's been there all along. Engineering was a fabulous fit. And then you have cultures, I won't name any, that say you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, and you're stuck in that, even though you don't have any natural ability. You can learn to be any of those, and it's maybe not as natural a fit, or you can train yourself. When you ask people who they were at 12 or 13, people ask me that after I learned what I was, and it was like, that was so funny. I used to charge 3 people for the same job and get paid by 3 different people. And my mom would punish me because she thought I was ripping them off. But I made a promise to you that I kept. You paid me. I made a promise to Todd, and I kept that for the same work. And he paid me, and he was happy. And then I had guys working for me, my friends, who I would pay them, but I would make money incrementally because I rounded up the crew. And I would be making about 10 times minimum wage at 13 years old when I wasn't allowed to work. I was doing that at 13, and people say, well, where'd you learn that? It didn't dawn on me that of course I was doing that. It was natural. Nobody at 13 thinks they have a genius talent because you're not supposed to. You're supposed to do spelling words, math equations, and write essays in school. But I was born with that, maybe. That's our theory. Look about junior high. That's a good place to look and say, what version of you were you doing the same role that you think is your genius talent? And people say, that's so funny. I interviewed a CEO last week and he said, I was the guy that was not only smoking dope behind the handball courts, I was selling it to the faculty. And I just laughed and I said, because that's who he is as a CEO now. He's got a publicly traded company that has the fastest annual recurring revenue in the history of public trade. He's a sales guy is what he is. And I said, so you're selling to the faculty? And he said, it was the smartest thing to do because how could I get in trouble if my customers were the faculty? And I thought, oh, that's hilarious. So he's smoking dope and selling it to the faculty. And he said, I was clearing about $750 a week in cash. And this would have been in the early 80s. And I was just cracking up because I thought that's who he is today. He's just not selling dope. He's selling cloud storage. And I thought, oh, that's funny. It's there. It's almost always there.
Yeah. So reflecting on your past, reflecting on probably what people are sharing with you, people around you that, hey, you are good at this, right? So when you hear many people saying that, hey, you are just naturally good at this, that's probably a good sign. And I know, Todd, was going through your mind, you wanted to take 90 days off to reflect on this and find your genius talent. And John is telling us that that's
do it in 3 hours instead. Save the 90 days and do it in 3 hours. Yeah. Here's the other place in your organization. If you round up everybody and put them in a circle without any discussion, everybody gets to write the name of the person who should design this year's year-end holiday party. Everybody in the organization knows who that one or maybe two people are who should design this year's. And every year it's designed usually by the CEO's admin. And it's the same holiday party we've had for the last 10 years. Boring food, boring music, too much alcohol, and the spouses are left out. You say, oh, no. What about that? Wait a minute, that one guy, he's super funny. That's the person who should do it. And that may be that may be a college intern. You say why don't we let our holiday party?
Yeah, John, I think we have discovered Todd's genius talent just talking during this call.
It's the first time in history.
Yeah, John, we do something called Coffee with Community in the morning at 7:30. We started it, I think it was March 18th or something. So it was just a virtual town hall to make sure our entire ITBD team is safe, they're healthy. But if there's one person after me who never missed and every single day, no matter what happened, who joined with so much energy that he lifted everyone else up, is Todd. Yeah. So just reflecting on that event in the morning, every single day, and what he brings to the table. If I have to think of someone who can be given a responsibility of coffee with the community and events in the community, like the fun events, our team engagement events, and that is so natural for Todd. And that's why I was saying, I think I know now what is Todd's genius talent is.
Now, I bet there's several people that haven't missed either, and they do it because they're compliant or obedient. They don't add, it's not that they don't add energy to the call, but they don't bring a positive or a growth thing to it. Somebody that brings energy and community and humor and connectivity, you want that person every single time. And somebody that joins because they said, well, it's a required coffee, and so I go, and they're a mope. That's not so helpful. Different talents doesn't mean that other person doesn't have a talent, but you wouldn't want them running it. You wouldn't want them to say, "Oh, John's on it every day because we know he'll attend." If I'm a mope, that's the last guy you want to run it.
And another thing that I have noticed just now, so energy, everything, the passion, and then creativity automatically is there, because what Todd has done during the Coffee with the Community, the way we have been doing this, he always came up with creative ideas to make it more fun, engaging, impactful. Example, he just added like kudos slide that, hey, every day, just having that that moment just for 60 seconds, and just giving kudos to each other, that brings so much positivity in the morning. So that creativity that comes, it just comes from your heart, because it's just natural for you.
Right. It's positivity, it's community, it's celebration, it's acknowledgement of others, it's teamwork, all rolled into a 60-second thing. And you think, Todd's the perfect person for that. And you wouldn't want somebody that and say, oh, we gave it to John, and so here's what he came up with. He came up with a slide deck, and it's 6 minutes, and it's boring as heck. Because that just takes all the air out of the conversation, and then people resent being on the call. Oh no, that's different skill. Yeah, absolutely different skill.
So, John, as you're working with your clients and your CEOs, how is the role of identifying not only their own genius talent, but the genius talent of their leaders and the teammates? So people enjoy coming to work and helping build that company. What role does that play?
No, it's perfect because it's aligning energy and passion with skill. But notice skill is the second one. Because if what we say is when you have your genius talent, work simply looks like play. You come home at the end of the day and you have more energy than when you left. I did a hostage negotiation with the FBI 6 years ago. I'm not a hostage negotiator, but it's a perfect fit for my genius talent. People said, that must have been super stressful. And I said, it was like it was like having great board night or board game night with friends. And it was super intricate and strategic, but it was a perfect fit. It was completely energizing. It took 17 days to work it all out. And I was the one who worked it out behind the FBI's back. They weren't doing a good job. So I finally literally hopped a fence and walked onto a property and came out with a hostage. Now people said, what? That's a perfect fit for me. Now for other people, they'd say, you could have gotten shot, maybe. But when you align people with their natural talent and just say, just play around there, you can predict that they're going to produce unbelievably great results. Now, maybe they're the VP of sales, as long as their genius talent would somehow support revenue generation, which is probably something around relationships, creating great, it could be strategic, it could be a combination of all those things. They'd be great in that role. And if not, find a different role that you say, oh, gosh, you juggle 11 balls with one hand? Maybe we ought to have you in something like physically with your hands because you've got really good hand-eye coordination. Would they be happier and more productive? Yep. And you'll also know on your team, you say what we really need. We've got all the fill in the blank ability. We've got all the technical ability. We're just a little weak here. We need to hire somebody that would be unbelievably good and love doing this sort of thing. You can design that as a role, but you want to look for the talent that fits it. And ask that question about seventh grade. You'll get it. You'll say, tell us about, where you crushed it in 7th or 8th grade. And they'll say, it's this weird thing. We did that. And you go, good. We want the weird thing. Because that's weird to the rest of the world, but for you, it's a perfect fit.
So, John, if someone wants to learn more about genius talent and reach out and contact you, what's the best way to find you?
So I'm fortunate that I picked bad parents and my last name is Hitler. I Google better than anybody else on the planet because nobody else wants that last name, and the SEO search is all mine. It's spelled differently, but that's the easiest is use my name, not my company name. But if you want to go to the company, it's evokinggenius.com.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for joining us today. We learned so much about genius talent, and I know how powerful it is once you know your genius talent and you align your energies, your kind of natural ability with your role and what you do in life. And definitely you can create a lot more value if you discover your genius talent and align yourself with that talent. And there's just so much value you can create that no one else can create, because every one of us are unique creatures, and we are one of billions, as your book says. And so thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. Thank you so much.
Well, it was great to be with two geniuses.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sonny. And to you, the viewer, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode. We hope you took a nugget or two and maybe even began on the path to find your own genius talent. And if you did, please honor us with a like, a share, and a comment. And don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. And we'll see you in the next one.